Hello, I'm Jay, and this is Relax with Jay. I create calming videos that allow you to relax and or drift off to sleep. If you enjoy my videos and find them helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe, and click on the notification bell. I hope you enjoyed this video and may it bring you restful sleep. Tonight, I'll be reading the first part of the fourth letter of the book called Frankenstein by Mary Wollstonecraft, Godwin, Shelley. If you enjoyed this letter and would like me to read more, please let me know.
Letter 4 to Miss Saville, England, August 5th, 17. So strange an incident has happened to us that I cannot forbear recording it, although it is very probable that you will see me before these papers can come into your possession. Last Monday, July 31st, we were nearly surrounded by ice, which closed in the ship on all sides, scarcely leaving her the sea room in which she floated. Our situation was somewhat dangerous, especially as we were compassed around by a very thick fog. We accordingly lay to hoping that some change would take place in the atmosphere and weather. About 2 o'clock, the mist cleared away, and we beheld stretched out in every direction vast and irregular plains of ice which seemed to have no end. Some of my comrades groaned, and my own mind began to grow watchful with anxious thoughts, when a strange sight suddenly attracted our attention and diverted our solitude from our own situation. We perceived a long carriage fixed on a sledge and drawn by dogs pass on towards the north at a distance of half a mile. A being which had the shape of a man, but apparently a gigantic stature, sat in the sledge and guided the dogs. We watched the rapid progress of the traveler with our telescopes until he was long lost among the distant inequalities of the ice. This appearance excited our unqualified wonder. We were, as we believed, many hundred miles from any land, but this apparition seemed to denote that this is not, in reality, so distant as we had supposed. Shut in, however, by ice, it was impossible to follow his track, which we had observed with the greatest attention. About 2 hours after this occurrence, we heard the ground sea, and before the night the ice broke and freed our ship. We, however, laid to until the morning, fearing to encounter in dark those large loose masses which float about after the breaking up of the ice. I profited of this time to rest for a few hours. In the morning, however, as soon as it was light, I went upon deck and found all the sailors busy on one side of the vessel, apparently talking to someone in the sea. It was, in fact, a sledge, like what we had seen before, which had drifted towards us in the night on a half fragmented of ice. Only one dog remained alive, but there was a human being within it whom the sailors were persuading to enter the vessel. He was not, as the other travelers seemed to be, a savage inhabitant of some undiscovered island, but a European. When I appeared on deck, the master said, "Here is our captain, and he will not allow you to perish on the open sea." Unpersevering me, the stranger addressed me in English, although with a foreign accent. "Before I come on board your vessel," said he, "will you have the kindness to inform me whither you bound?" You may conceive my astonishment on hearing such a question addressed to me from a man on the brink of destruction, and to whom I should have supposed that my vessel would have been a resource which he would not have exchanged for the most precious wealth on earth can afford. I replied, however, that we were on a voyage of discovery towards the northern pole. Upon hearing this, he appeared satisfied and consented to come aboard. Good God, Margaret, if you had seen the man who thus capitulated for his safety, your surprise would have been boundless. His limbs were nearly frozen, and his body dreadfully emaciated by fatigue and suffering. I never saw a man in so wretched a condition. We attempted to carry him into the cabin, but as soon as he had quitted the fresh air, he fainted. We accordingly brought him back to the deck and restored him to emulation by rubbing him with brandy and forcing him to swallow a small quantity. As soon as he swallowed signs of life, we wrapped him up in blankets and placed him near the chimney of the kitchen stove. By slow degrees he recovered and ate a little soup, which restored him wonderfully. 2 days passed in this manner before he was able to speak, and I often feared that his suffering had deprived him of understanding. When he had in some measure recovered, I removed him to my own cabin and attended on him as much as my duty would permit. I never saw a more interesting creature. His eyes had generally an expression of wildness and even madness, but there are moments when, if anyone performs an act of kindness towards him or does him any the most trifling service, his whole countenance is lit up, as it were, with the beam of benevolence and sweetness that I have never saw equalled. But he is generally melancholy and despairing, and sometimes he garnishes his teeth, as if impatient of the weight of woes that oppresses him. When my guest was a little recovered, I had great trouble to keep off the men, who wished to ask him 1,000 questions, but I would not allow him to be tormented by their idle curiosity. In a state of body and mind whose restoration evidently depended upon entire repose, once, however, the lieutenant asked why he had come so far upon the ice in so strange a vehicle. His countenance instantly assumed an aspect of the deepest gloom, and he replied, "To seek one who fled from me." And he did the man who you pursued travel in the same fashion. Yes, then I fancy we have seen him, for the day before we picked you up we saw some dogs drowning a sledge with a man in it across the ice. This aroused the stranger's attention, and he asked a multitude of questions concerning the route which the demon, as he called them, had pursued. Soon after, when he was alone with me, he said, "I have doubtless excited your curiosity as well as that of these good people, but you are too considerate to make inquiries. Certainly, it would be indeed to be very imprudent and inhumane in me to trouble you with my inquisitiveness of mind. And yet you rescued me from a strange and perilous situation, and you have benevolently restored me to life." Soon after this, he inquired if I thought that the breaking up of the ice had destroyed the other sledge. I replied that I could not answer with any degree of certainty, for the ice had not broken up until near midnight, and the traveler might have arrived at the place of safety before that time, but of this I could not judge. From this time a new spirit of life animated the decaying frame of the stranger. He manifested the greatest eagerness to be upon deck to watch for the sledge which had before appeared, but I have persuaded him to remain in the cabin, for he is far too weak to sustain the rawness of the atmosphere. I have promised that someone should watch for him and give him instant notice if any new object should appear in sight. Such is my journal of what relates to this strange occurrence up to the present day. The stranger has gradually improved in health, but is very silent and appears uneasy when anyone except myself enters his cabin. Yet his manners are so conciliating and gentle that the sailors are all interested in him, although they have had very little communication with him. For my own part, I begin to love him as a brother, and his constant and deep grief fills me with sympathy and compassion. He must have been a noble creature in his better days, being even now in wreck so attractive and amicable. I said in one of my letters, my dear Margaret, that I shall find no friend on the wild ocean. Yet I have found a man who, before his spirit had been taken by misery, I should have been happy to have possessed as the brother of my heart. I shall continue my journey concerning the stranger at interval, should I have any fresh incident to record.